Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. Today we are doing our Division 2 Week 5 and 6 update show, if you will. A bit of a mouthful, but that is the kind of thing. We've been doing these throughout the season, sort of bi-weekly, going through, updating you about what's been going on in the County Championship world, and this is one specifically to do with Division 2, so we'll be talking about sort of the general news that's been going on, a bit of a results look over the last few weeks of the games and what's been going on. We'll have a look and we'll talk about the sort of standout team from Division 2 from these last few weeks, the standout batters, standout bowlers, and a standout all-rounder. Then we'll do the County Chat 12, my personal favourite moment of the thing, trying to put that together, and then that will be our show. That'll be a sort of nice half an hour show, hopefully, and we will have talked all about County Cricket Division 2. And without further ado, we'll sort of get on to the sort of general news within County Cricket Division 2. I'm not going to lie, there's not a huge amount I could find and I was aware of. So we've gone for a few little bits and bobs here for the general news situation. Firstly, Zach Crawley gets dropped from the England side. Really, a real shame for his career. Obviously, he's had 60 Test matches at England, so I'm not pretending he's really hard done by, but tough moment for his career. He plays against Durham, so meaning he's playing against the sort of captain who would have been a part of the dropping process for him. Kent Butt first on what looks like a good wicket. Crawley's 30-odd not out. He's looking all right. Smashes one to cover off Stokes' bowling. Gets caught by Matty Potts, I believe. So again, Crawley goes off. The young opening batter that he's batting with, Ben Dawkins, goes on to score 180. The number 3 batter, Sam Northeast, goes on to score 120. I don't know what their partnership actually was, but I'd have to assume it was, somewhere north of a 100, 150 even. You'd even probably guess 200. Let me just see, so I'm not just waffling here. Yeah, it was a 303 run partnership. So Zach Crawley, bless him feels harsh, but had a tough go for him, basically. Ben Dawkins is really talented young cricketer. To go on the more positive side of it, Ben Dawkins, an incredibly talented young batter who I've been a huge fan of for a little bit of a while. I mentioned him in another of these podcasts, and I thought it's a shame with Ben Copton being around and obviously Crawley being around that he can't really play. And he was playing twos cricket, he was panning around double hundreds, and all of this stuff. And you're just like, how can this guy get snuck into this Kent team? And Ben Compton, I believe, had a hand injury or finger injury, had to drop out. Ben Dawkins gets his opportunity at the top of the lineup. Opening the batting was Zach Crawley, which must have been pretty cool for him as well. The young Kent player, so it must have been really cool for him. Imagine going through the Kent system, and that's kind of when Crawley's getting his England call up and all of those sort of things. So them opening the batting must have been a cool moment for him in and of itself. And then Crawley gets out, not cheaply. I think he scored 30 odd. And then Dawkins at Beckenham alongside Northeast get some real big runs. Cool for him, cool for Kent, who obviously sort of turned it around in the last few weeks if you've been watching much of the County Championship. So yeah, a cool story for Ben Dawkins, but I must admit a tough moment for Creepy Crawley, unfortunately. Another sort of small bit of signing news is more of like a bit of an injury thing. Kemar Roach pilled up a hamstring injury. He was always going to be replaced by Dwan Olivier, I believe. And basically the hamstring injury, they've just sort of fast-tracked that signing. So Olivier is going to be here sooner. And I guess will be playing in those sort of mid-round fixtures and that sort of mid-block rather than Kemar Roach, which I think was the original plan. Anyway, but yeah, if you're a Division 2 County Championship fan and I've missed some really obvious big news story that has happened in the last few weeks, apologies. I just couldn't find anything and nothing was coming to me in a sense. So that's all you're getting from me. So we'll move sort of straight onto the sort of results look over, if you will. Going through about how teams have been going, how the games have been playing out, and just a general just look at those fixtures. So we'll do a little bit of screen sharing here. So yeah, here we are, is going through the kind of screen sharing element and going through just the fixtures from the last few weeks in Division 2. So Kent started their kind of successful period of time, winning quite comfortably against Derbyshire. I'd say actually quite comfortably. I think it was just a case of a good toss to win, and the results, they were just always on top sort of throughout. I think runs for Tuanda Mie in that game. Just Kent generally looking at a far better side than they had been. Another big win for a side who'd been struggling a little bit, maybe compared to what they want to be doing, was Northamptonshire getting their first win of the season, I believe, against Worcestershire. Big first innings. Worcestershire just couldn't kind of keep up with the bat, and that's often been Worcestershire's problem over the last few years. And Northampton doing the job. And Middlesex played Durham at home at at Lords, and just not a wicket where a result always looked possible, if my memory serves. And 4:30 plays 5, 6, 7 in the first innings is rarely going to see a result come out of it in a 4-day fixture. Derbyshire then responded incredibly well to having been beaten by Kent and beat Northamptonshire very, very comfortably at home. And Derby at home, if they bat first, are a real team to trifle with. I think their bowlers work really well for that wicket. I think the fact that they have Shoaib Bashir, and dare I say, one of the best spinners in England, but I think as much as we've all been critical of him being an England spinner, I actually don't think at this point, with the amount of kind of progression he's made, you couldn't argue he isn't one of the best spinners in England. It is a weird kind of way around of looking at it, and I know I've been quite a vocal critic of his. But anyway, he was a part to play in that Northamptonshire win, and Derbyshire getting big runs at home is sort of never a surprising thing. This was probably the best fixture actually throughout this whole block in a way, and it was to do with involved Gloucestershire, who've been struggling majorly, I think it's safe to say. But they were involved in probably one of the closest games of county cricket you will kind of ever see, and I know it sounds a bit like hyperbolic maybe, but if you think Gloucestershire scored 3-2-5 in their first innings, and Kent scored 3-2-7, so remarkably similar, right? 2 runs different. Then Gloucestershire in their second innings scored 2-6-2, so therefore set Kent 2-6-1. And Kent win by 2 wickets. So if you see, the point I'm trying to make is that throughout the game was so close. Literally, there's not even like any nuance to it. The numbers were just so close the whole way through. It remained close. And again, if I was being critical on Gloucestershire, unfortunately, I think they probably would have won that game in a year where they just had more bowling. I mean, you think all the bowlers they lost this summer. I keep saying this winter, and the effect that's had, and I think that's been Gloucestershire's main drawback. Durham won a typically low-scoring fixture at Worcester at New Road. Worcester actually had a really good first innings and had a 40-run first innings lead, and you'd be looking as a Worcester fan like, oh, we can do over top of the table here. Now, nice. Bowled out for 102 in their third knock. Often what people say kind of decides games, especially 4-day games, and 102 it was never going to be enough. And then Durham chased for 143 not fairly comfortably, very comfortably, 143, only one down. Lancashire lost at home to Middlesex, I think was an incredibly important fixture. And again, speaking of a third innings where it kind of capitulates, Lancashire scored 201 in the first innings. Middlesex reply with only 169. And then Lancashire bundled out for 84 against Middlesex. So, a really good effort from Middlesex's bowling. You have to give them credit. But again, Lancashire at home, I think that's been a problem for them. Their actual form at Manchester and the outgrounds around Lancashire hasn't been maybe as good as they need it to be for them to be promotion pushing. And then Kent played Durham at Beckenham, as I was just mentioning in that game, where Ben Dawkins scored runs. Again, a good batting pitch. They also had a lot of time missed because of rain that got under the covers, which is really a bad look for county cricket just in general. And let's be honest, outground cricket. Always tough when stuff like that happens. A lot of heavy rain around this weekend, to give the groundsmen their credit. Gloucestershire again involved in another really tight fixture that they lose again. Northamptonshire beat them by 2 wickets. Again, I think both were at Bristol. These are both home games for them, and they lost by 2 wickets in very close chases. They got bundled out for 154, and then it was all of a sudden like, oh, they've actually done well in that first innings. 127 all out for Northants. Then Gloucestershire get 2-2-1, and again you're like, oh, they've got the 2 highest scores of this whole game. It's going to go well for Gloucestershire, right? Gloucestershire are finally going to get a win this season. Northamptonshire chase it down 2-5-1 for 8. Again, it's hard not to see past that lack of bowling. And then Southport, Worcestershire played Lancashire, a heavily rain-affected fixture, if my memory serves, over the last few days. And Worcestershire sort of played out well for the draw, but never looked like anything other than a draw, I think, for most of that game. So that's the kind of results roundup. Quite a lot of fixtures actually ending in quite close games. I think Division 2 has that competition often, and I think in Division 2, I've talked about this. I actually think Division 2 runs better as a league because there are 8 teams and they play 14 matches. So it actually works and logically makes sense, which Division 1 doesn't. And I think that you can actually see that play out in fixtures and how tight they are. There's also just an element of sort of natural variation, of course, obviously, with these fixtures and how they play out. But yeah, a kind of good set of fixtures in a weird way. And not a weird way, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of close games, a lot of good games, and all of those sort of things. Now, onto the sort of standout team for Division 2. I kind of have dropped hints to it, but after having a really tough start to their year, Kent have done brilliantly in the last 3 weeks. I mean, to put it in perspective, they drew their first game, drew their second game, lost by an innings, then beat Derbyshire, then beat Gloucestershire, then drew against Durham. So again, they kind of started the year average to well. Not average to bad, I would say. Their first three fixtures, they were draw, loss. And in both the draws, they didn't look like winning it at all, if that makes sense. If you remember their second game of the season, that's when Northamptonshire scored 684 for 2. And they just about blocked out for a draw, having been followed on at home. Then they lose by an innings against Worcestershire. So a lot of the signs weren't great. So you come into this block of 3 and you go, okay, they're playing Derbyshire at home, they're going away to Gloucestershire, and they're playing at home to Durham. If they can come out sort of looking okay from this, you'd see how it goes. They beat Derbyshire quite comfortably at home. They then win a very tight match at Gloucestershire and then draw against Durham, who have been the runaway top team of this league. But also they scored 523 in that first innings. My point being is that Kent had a really, really good couple of weeks. And I think in my head, almost the start of their season was worse than it was. So maybe when I was reading out the results, I was almost surprised by the sound of they actually haven't lost as many as I thought they had. But I think it was more games like the Northamptonshire one where, Northampton nearly scored 700 runs and Kent nearly got followed on and lost. And yeah, it was probably because Northamptonshire probably batted a bit too long, in essence, is maybe why they didn't lose that game, to be totally honest. But Kent since have been brilliant. Chris Benjamin's been a massive part of that for Kent. Twanda Mie, a lot of great cricketers, a lot of talented cricketers at Kent. I think it's been their bowling that has held them back, but they've kind of managed to get the wickets where they needed to and let their batting kind of lead them in a lot of these games. And so all power to the Spitfires. They deserve it. They've now found their way up to third. So they're kind of, they're now in and around that second place. I think if you look at the table, Durham are quite well ahead on 105 points, already 20 points clear of Northamptonshire in second. But then there is a massive bunching. From 7th to 2nd, there's 14 points in it in Division 2. So that second place promotion spot is getting pretty close, and Kent have kind of put themselves in a really, really good position for that. Anyway, to sort of move off to sort of the standout team and now going on to our sort of standout players from the last few weeks. We have to sort of kick off with the batter as we do. We do batter, bowler, and an all-rounder. I think there was a few people who stood out to me, and I think over the course of this year, before this year began, I said of these two cricketers and this one cricketer, particularly for Durham, if he takes it seriously and really knuckles in, David Beddingham should score buckets of runs in Division 2. And he didn't actually start the year all that well. But then, as of the 10th of April, I'll read out his run scoring. 118 against Gloucestershire, 17 in the first innings against Lancashire, 129 not out, 147 against Middlesex, 83 against Worcestershire, 74 against Kent. The other guy I think has to be given a shout out to, it's also Emilio Gay, but Emilio Gay actually for the last few games hasn't scored as heavily. David Bedding was now overtaking him for that number one spot in the run scoring charts. Over 6 matches, he's had 8 innings, 628 runs and an average of 89. Sounds like a standout batter to me. David Beddingham does also bat in the top 6 for the World Test Champions South Africa team. So it's one of those where you don't have to be a genius of cricket to work out that David Beddingham probably would do well in Division 2 of county cricket. And he has, and I think he will go on to have a massive season. It's also the fact that I think Durham feel like a very much of a Division 1 side because of how they built and how they were looking. But them getting relegated was a real shock. But Durham had actually played in Division 2 recently enough that I believe David Beddingham had played a season of Division 2 cricket. So it's not even like he could get done by the kind of novelty of maybe even more of a medium-paced bowler you see in Division 2 cricket or the kind of wickets you face or whatever. He's seen it all before, and at the end of the day, his quality has only gone up since he last played there. So I could see him finishing on 1,300 runs, 1,400 runs, and not looking that difficult for him. And I think him averaging north of 80 this season is not beyond the pale, basically. Speaking of people who've had just like a remarkable last few games and someone I've always been a big fan of, and I think anyone, again, I always say this about this cricketer, but I think anyone who's a county cricket fan knows this name and knows just how quality is. But it's Ben Sanderson. Over the course of his career, he's in his late 30s now, 37. He's taken 454 wickets at an average of 22 and an economy of 2.7. He's been at Northants for a lot of that. Also Yorkshire. He's a Sheffield lad originally. But yeah, Ben Sanderson is one of those cricketers that if you know, you know. And over the last few weeks, he's been shoving it down your face if you don't know, if that makes sense. Not a bit of a mixed metaphor there. But Ben Sanderson's last 3 games, I did a little mini bit of calculation here: 20 wickets at an average of 13.55. That included a 10-for in one of those games. But yeah, to do what I did with David Beddingham since the 1st of May, against Worcestershire, 4 for 78 and then 7 for 31. Against Derbyshire, 1 for 65, and then against Gloucestershire, 5 for 47 and 3 for 50. He's just had a ridiculously good year. He'll probably end up taking more than 60 wickets this year. I mean, it would actually be a surprise at this point if he didn't take more than 60 wickets. He's a brilliant bowler. He can use the sort of tricky conditions really well, but also on a drier wicket, he's one of those people you can get the keeper standing up, get him nibbling it around and be able to set really good fields. He's the kind of bowler that if you were batting, you just would hate to face at any level. And I think there's almost not enough credit given for those kind of bowlers because they kind of just said, oh, they're just dibbly dobblers. And you wouldn't see that in Test cricket. And you can probably see who I'm maybe getting at there. But at any level of cricket, the bowlers who know exactly how to bowl to their field, they know exactly where they're going to bowl. They're not going to make many 4 balls, are always hard to face, regardless of standard. And Ben Sanderson is exactly that guy. So yeah, all power to him. A great season so far for him, and an unsurprising pick for standout bowler from the last few weeks. Now we get on to the all-rounders, and this, as always, the all-rounder is a bit more tricky, I think, because you're trying to weigh up what value you weigh more on a bowling all-rounder versus a batting all-rounder, etc., etc., etc. I've gone with someone who I think has already won this award because he scored a massive 200 to start the season. But Martin Anderson, I think, has had a really, really, really good and underrated last few weeks. So against, since May 1st, 37, 15, 106 and 0 with the bat, but with the ball, 1 for 32, 2 for 33, 0 for 20, 2 for 36, 1 for 25, 1 for 41. He's just been plugging away with the ball, picking up wickets here and there, but he's also still in the top 4 for runs in county cricket, and that's above people like Ben McKinney, Chris Benjamin, who I mentioned, Twan Millet, Dan Lakegan, who's been a great find this year for Worcestershire, and that's also not accounting for his bowling, where he takes very handy wickets for Derbyshire. So yeah, it's a great start to the season for him. And Martin Anderson is someone who, if you don't know, get to know, because he's just a really, really handy, talented cricketer. Other people who can get a shout out for that all-rounder spot: Ben Aitchison, who just had like an unbelievable game against Middlesex at Lords. Calvin Harrison is continued to be a very good, someone who bats 3 and is a frontline spinner. He's a pretty valuable player, and Calvin Harrison does exactly that for Northamptonshire. And then lastly, Ryan Higgins. He finally got the 100 he'd been looking for a while, but he also just consistently takes wickets. He's averaging 20 with the ball with 28 wickets. So again, he's having a ridiculously good year. And again, sort of all power to him. Now we do move on to, again, the bit I say is sort of my favourite bit of making these little lists up, is the County Chat 12. So we do a kind of, in essence, the County Chat 12, and basically it's a rolling list. So it's the case of which it's not a only for these 3 weeks or 2 weeks. It's kind of throughout the year, so you have to kind of stay in the team. If your form drops off, all of those sort of things, you will drop out of it. But if you've had a ridiculously good start to your year and you're still averaging 70 by the time I go back to this list, you're probably going to stay within it. Anyway, without further ado, we'll list off the team. So opening the batting, we've gone Durham heavy here. Ben McKinney, but Emilio Gay, who has been batting 3 for Durham all year, and that did not pass me by because I've done this on both lists, first Division 1 and Division 2, and it doesn't make me proud, but I think Emilio Gay, the fact that he's opening the batting for England, I think it's safe to say he can open the batting. Alex Lees, the other Durham opener, is the captain, so he's never going to drop out of that spot. But again, it could easily be Emilio Gay. But anyway, Ben McKinney, again, he's the only opener who's a sort of true opener, if you will. And let's have a look. He's 5th in run scoring, 471 runs, average of 67. He has a massive 244 this season. And then Emilio Gay, 552, average of 78. I mean, again, an international quality player. I think everyone would agree at this point with Emilio Gay. And it's just about where he bats for Durham and where he's going to bat for England, obviously, is the big story. At number 3, it's the person who is in 3rd place for run scoring this year. It's Lewis Deploy. 515 runs, average of 51. He bats more at 4, I think, for Middlesex. But again, Emilio Gay being at 3, it threw a lot of things out of whack. You can tell the kind of internal battle I've been going through as I put this together. I say I enjoy putting this list together. I do, but I find it hard at the same time. At number 4, obviously, I've just given him the sort of shout out for being the best batter in the Division 2 by a long way, and arguably one of the best batters in county championship cricket, just full stop. But David Bedingham, third time on the list. I actually kind of snuck him in at the 12th man a couple of times because he didn't actually fit within the top 5. Now he's a top run scorer in the county championship Division 2. So again, a bit of a no-brainer. Going on to all-rounder, again, sort of for someone I've already mentioned, so I won't harp on too long, but Martin Anderson for Derbyshire, third time on the list. He stayed on the list all year. Again, yeah, if you don't know this bit of it, number of times on the list is Roman numerals. So Ben McKinney, Lewis Deploy, Bedingham, Anderson, and a certain Ben Rain and Sir James Anderson have stayed on the list all year. But a lot of new faces this week, which is great. And speaking of one of these new faces, someone who dropped off the list was Joe Cracknell. He's been out with injury, but this made me happy as someone who went to Durham University. Both keeper batters are from Durham University. Joe Cracknell was there when I was there, and as was Chris Benjamin. Chris Benjamin has been brilliant for Kent over the last few weeks and been a big part of Kent's sort of revival, and he'd been batting well all year. But he's from batting 7 for Kent. He scored 450 runs, average of 56, 100, 350s. Yeah, if you've seen him bat, and again, I've seen Chris Benjamin bat quite up close whilst I was at uni there. He's just got a real classical good technique, and over long format cricket, it just you can tell it would translate. So yeah, big sort of season for him so far. I've just seen that Ryan Higgins is missing out his Roman numerals. I think he's been on the list twice. He could even be 3 himself. So apologies for that. I'll see if I can remedy that in the edit because I'll work out retrospectively how many times he's been on the list. But yeah, not really sure why that's missed out. But anyway, Ryan Higgins scored that 100, as I mentioned. His bowling has been ridiculous. It was a bit of a question if I went with Ryan Higgins or Lewis Rees. I think that may be why his Roman numerals missed up because Lewis Rees has had a bit of a good go. But the amount of runs Lewis Rees has scored more than Ryan Higgins is not enough for the amount of more wickets that Higgins has taken than Lewis Rees, if that makes sense. So Ryan Higgins slips in at 7, and that's why Benjamin's up at 6. Ben Rain just scored 100, but he's been arguably as dominant in Division 2 as someone like David Bedingham has. Ben Rain is averaging about 50 with the bat. He's averaging 15 with the ball. Yes, you heard me right, 15. He's taken 33 wickets at 15s and an economy of 2.48. Ben Rain, I'm a big fan of him as a cricketer. Left-hand bat, right-arm bowler, and I think he'll stay on this list all year because he is just quality and he knows how to get wickets and he knows how to score runs. He just scored his career best, 106 in the game that just finished up at Beckenham. Ben Aitchison, someone who snuck into the list for the first time today, he scored 100 at Lords. He's also taken 28 wickets at an average of 24 this season. So his bowling has been his main skill, obviously. For someone who bats 9, you sort of expect that. But again, his 100 from a night watchman sort of position, really impressive. His first class 100, I believe. Yeah. He now averages 16 with that 100 added on. So again, he must have been averaging in the low 10s before that. So yeah, really good. The one that is maybe shocking that it's his first time on the list, bearing in mind he's now quite a clear number 1 of wickets, is Ben Sanderson. But again, his last 3 weeks, he's taken 20 wickets. So again, when I last did this list, he was on 14. He's now on 34. 34 wickets at an average of 16 and an economy of 2.66. He's bowled lots of overs. He's so reliable. You know exactly what you're going to get. Yeah, I've said all I need to say. Again, speaking of someone you don't need to say much about, Sir James Anderson remains the captain in this list, and until he kind of drops off the list, I'll probably keep him as captain just because of you got to respect your England legends. But again, he's still third place in wickets. He's had a bit of like a slight drop off, and he's not been bowling as many overs as his contemporaries. Like his strike rate is better than all of them, but his overs he's bowled about 30 less on average, I'd say, than all the other guys in the top sort of 5 or 6. He's bowled 178, and the closest to him in the top 5 wicket takers is Ben Rain on 207. So it kind of just shows that like he has been protecting himself a little bit and probably has been told to protect himself a bit, but his strike rate is quite a lot lower sort of because of that. So, Bazball, are you interested? And then lastly, on the County Chat 12, again, speaking of decisions that were really difficult, was James Sales. He's had a really, really good year. He's kind of improved himself as an all-rounder. 5 wickets he's taken, but he's been his batting. He is a batter at the end of the day, but his batting is what is kind of got him into the team, if you will. 440 runs at an average of 73. So hence why he kind of gets the best of the rest spot that the 12th man is made for in the County Chat 12. Some honourable mentions, as I mentioned, Lewis Rees, Tawanda Mie. I think Tawanda Mie, should probably sneak in if you did an extra batter on one less bowler, but the bowlers, there's been so many good bowlers. George Balderson's become a really big part of Lancashire. He's started opening the batting for them, but also has taken some of the most wickets in the division, just full stop. Let me have a look at the wickets in the division. I believe he's ninth in wickets for Division 1, whilst also being one of the opening batters in the last few weeks. Matty Potts, again, unsurprising, he's been doing very well. Harry Conway, who don't know why I accidentally did that. Harry Conway is just dropped off the list, but again, he's been doing very well for Northamptonshire. But there's been quite a lot of people who did drop off the list. So Dan Lakegan, I didn't mention, but again, I kept sort of saying if he didn't score a big score, he would eventually drop off this list. And again, if I was being really strict and going with only an opening batter, he would probably be that opening batter. He's just still not got a 100-run score yet this season, and his average has just slowly dwindled from the start of the season. Speaking of people whose averages have dwindled, Marcus Harris had a typical Marcus Harris sort of start to the year, in the sense of he was banging in runs and it looked like he would never get out. But actually in recent weeks, he's sort of started to get out. He's now 366 runs at an average of 45, which is incredibly good. But Marcus Harris last year and this year had before this iteration of the list, have been averaging up in the 80s. Cracknell, as I mentioned, injury related. He's having a really, really good year. So, hopefully for his sake, it's not a long injury. Toby Rowland-Jones just didn't take the sort of volume of wickets, and if it could be rain affected largely as well. I don't think he's actually been able to bowl as much as other people. But he's just dropped a little bit. So again, he fell off the list. And as I mentioned, Harry Conway, same sort of goes for him. Having a really, really good year. It's just that loads of seam bowlers having a really, really good year. And Ben Aitchison had such a good week, it felt impossible to miss him off the list. And Ben Sanderson was definitely not being missed off the list. Bear in mind, he's the top wicket getter in Division 2. That's the County Chat 12. And yeah, it's a good lineup, a good amount of people staying in it, but also a good amount of people dropping off, if you will. So a nice little moving around. So anyway, that is all for the County sort of Chat Division 2 update show, if you will, for weeks 5 and 6. It kind of is also working as sort of a bit of a mid-season break in a sense. But yeah, if you have enjoyed, make sure to drop a subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, a follow if it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, drop a rating, drop a comment. I always love chatting to you in the comment section. So if you've got anything I've missed, I'm certainly not perfect. So do let me know. I'm very happy to chat to you. Maybe I always say on these things, your county's better than I do. So if there's something about your county that I've misspoke, whatever it might be, I'm very happy to hear from you. If you got to this point, thank you very much for watching. There should be some similar kind of videos popping up now. If you're just starting your day, I hope you have a great day. And if you just finished today, I hope you had a great day. I've been the County Chat. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.